Let's face it, Beneil Dariush's ideal scenario would be to fight for the lightweight championship at UFC 280, but that's not how Dana planned it. He will make weight at 155 pounds as the backup to the main event though. In the battle of the lightweights between Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev, the Iranian-American will be the backup in case things don't go to plan. For more on what he says about the situation and much more, keep watching. First, let's take a look at what Dariush had to say about being the backup. So, we know that Dariush is preparing for his own bout against Mateusz Gamrot on the same show on October 22nd, but he claims that he's been warned to be ready in case either of the main event fighters gets injured. And in a sport like MMA, you just never know. Anyway, Dariush spoke more about it with MMA Fighting and mentioned that his controversial manager Ali Abdelaziz told him to be prepared. In recent years, the UFC has either scheduled a fight in the same weight class or hired a fighter to serve as a backup to keep high-profile main events from falling apart in the days leading up to the event. During the pandemic, athletes, coaches, and teammates tested positive for COVID-19, making the promotion have to do many last-minute adjustments to competitions. So now, as a safety net, the UFC adopts a just-in-case of emergency plan to avoid the loss of a massive main event. And UFC 280 is nothing if not massive. Next up, the lightweight isn't going to have any trouble making weight. The 33-year-old will actually have no trouble cutting the additional weight. The reason why is simple. He's done it before. He faced a similar situation when he was on the same card as Oliveira when Do Bronx challenged Michael Chandler for the vacant lightweight title at UFC 262. Speaking of that event, Beneil actually faced a little bit of a weight fiasco. What happened was that he did make weight, but when he got on the digital scale, the digits showed 155.2. This was the scale from the promotion. Then he got onto the scale by the Athletic Commission. The weight went up to 156.2. Obviously, this was pretty annoying, but Dariush sucked it up and went back and cut some more weight. This time though, he intends to definitely make 155 pounds. Coming up next, let's look at his training for the fight. So, if you'll remember, the Iranian was set to meet Makhachev in a February championship eliminator before suffering an ankle injury that pulled him out of action. Things might have been looking very differently if he'd won, but then again, he was also scheduled to face Oliveira. This only adds to his confidence if he's actually called to compete in the main event at the last minute. After all Beneil does is prepare, especially for 5-round fights. For 3 rounds, all he has to do is go crazy. He can definitely push himself as far as he wants, but in 5 rounds, he'll have to pace himself so he doesn't gas out too quickly. As far as training for Islam or Charles goes, Dariush believes the best way to achieve it is to be as well-rounded as possible in terms of striking, timing, and wrestling. That's a tall order, but given his impressive performances lately, he might just pull it off. But first, he has a huge challenge in the form of Mateusz Gamrot in front of him. How will he fare against the Polish savage? Next up, Dariush remains the underdog against Gamrot. The 33-year-old is a minor betting underdog versus Gamrot in their UFC 280 main event fight. The UFC's 6th-ranked lightweight is on a 7-fight winning run, and yet he's still the plus 135 betting underdog versus Gamrot. Meanwhile, the 9th-ranked Gamrot is the minus 155 betting favorite to defeat Dariush. Both fighters are definitely on a roll, as Gamrot comes from a win over Arman Tsarukyan in the main event and fight of the night at UFC Vegas 57 at the UFC's Apex facility in Las Vegas, Nevada. The victory marked the 31-year-old Polish fighter's 4th in a row since losing his UFC debut by split decision to Goran Kudalate in October 2020. His record is 4-1 in the UFC, with 4 of his victories earning him a post-fight bonus. The former KSW featherweight and lightweight champion entered the UFC with an unblemished 17-0 record. After a close loss to Kudalate, he stopped Scott Holzman and Jeremy Stevens in back-to-back fights, earning the Performance of the Night award in each. And then again, in December 2021, he defeated Carlos Diego Ferreira via TKO to secure his first fight against Tsarukyan. So, Gamrot is 21-1 with 7 knockouts and 5 submission victories. This is his longest odds as a betting favorite inside the UFC octagon at minus 155. It speaks volumes that the 31-year-old has only been an underdog once in his career, when he finished at plus 255 odds against Tsarukyan in his most recent fight. Next up, Dariush has an impressive resume too. After all, the man just defeated a fading Tony Ferguson. It was a painful fight, much like all the El Cucuy fights lately, and before that, the 33-year-old 22-year-old Iranian-born American had defeated Thiago Moises, Drew Dober, Frank Camacho, Drakkar Klose, Scott Holtzman, and Carlos Diego Ferreira. Those are some big names, and Dariush boasts a record of 21-4, including 4 knockouts and 8 submission victories. So, he started as the betting underdog in a UFC fight for the 3rd time in a row. This wouldn't feel great, as Dariush was given plus 105 odds against Ferreira in the beginning, and he was also given plus 105 odds against Ferguson. Next, Khabib Nurmagomedov doesn't think Oliveira will actually fight. Yep, you heard us. There's been some unprecedented trash talk from the Eagle, and in his latest tweets, he now thinks Oliveira won't even fight his protege, Islam Makhachev. Here's the thing, Nurmagomedov thinks that Dariush will be the one to face Islam. The Brazilian has been on a winning streak that's led him to the gold, with 11 wins and 1 title defense. But then there's Makhachev, who's on a long winning streak at the top of the division, and will be quite an opponent for Du Bronx. Now, let's look at some other UFC news that you might have missed. Coming up, UFC fighters are suffering with the infamous Rock deal. You've probably seen the clip where Nate Diaz took aim at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson over the Hollywood star's recently disclosed footwear deal with the UFC. Even though Diaz's statements were deleted from the official broadcast, the tape became super viral when it hit Twitter. At the time, it was the first instance of a UFC fighter openly opposing the organization's newest sponsor, a sponsor whose money isn't going to reward the very fighters who are wearing the sneakers. After all UFC athletes and corner teams are required to wear Project Rock footwear during fight week, training, and the walk to the octagon. While Johnson appears to have the respect of some of the organization's athletes, The Guardian uncovered that the movie star's new deal didn't actually benefit UFC fighters. So, none of the athletes were given extra money to wear or advertise Project Rock sneakers. This isn't going to end well, we can just feel it. Next up, lightweight Bobby Green gets back a positive drug test. The popular UFC lightweight revealed in an Instagram video that he was forced to withdraw from a scheduled bout at UFC 276, and the reason disappointed a lot of folks. He got back a positive drug test. Green explained that he received a call from the UFC while in training camp for his July 2nd battle against fellow veteran fighter Jim Miller, letting him know that he tested positive for a banned substance. Green believes the positive result was caused by a DHEA supplement he was using. Well, he did have some reasons why he did what he did. The 36-year-old stated that DHEA was advised by a doctor who he usually follows on YouTube, and his wife purchased the supplement at Walmart from the Business Spring Alley. Anyway, he did apologize and mentioned that he's never tested positive in 14 years as a pro fighter. Now finally, the UFC finally cuts Aspen Ladd. So, after multiple weight misses, it seems like Aspen Ladd's next bout seems to be outside of the UFC. She was at one point regarded as one of the most promising female MMA prospects, but after not making weight again, Dana had no other choice. She was scheduled to face Olympic medalist and former UFC title contender Sarah McMahon at UFC Fight Night 210. That fight had already been rescheduled once, after Ladd withdrew earlier this summer, and then Ladd weighed 138 pounds for her Las Vegas battle with McMahon. It was her 3rd UFC weight miss and 4th overall, including a weight miss in 2016 under the Invicta FC brand. She made no more attempts to cut weight after her trip to the scale, and the fight was eventually cancelled. This was pretty disappointing, as she has a long history of missed weight cuts. For instance, remember that scary moment when Ladd was all shaky on the scale before her fight against Germaine de Randamie in 2019? Well, she made weight and was permitted to fight, but she was quickly TKO'd. Anyway, as tough as it is, it was bound to happen at some point. We wish her all the best for her future. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Dariush can defeat Gamrot and get the next title shot? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.